So here we go, the 9.3 Chaffee. Chaffee was the last of the original endline Tier 5 light tanks to be changed. It stayed a Tier 5, unlike the 2801 and the 50-2 replacement, the MT25. However, it lost a shit ton of hit points as well as its top gun and its top turret. Now what this means for the Chaffee is that it's lost the ability to tank hits from any of the more hard-hitting Tier 5 tanks, as well as Tier 6s and 7s. You can no longer survive an encounter with a KV-1S, you can no longer rely on surviving an encounter with a Derp Sherman. To make up for this loss, the Chaffee is actually quite a lot faster. Its speed limit's been raised, it can now go about 70 kilometers an hour. In theory. In practice, of course, you're unlikely to reach this speed unless you get a significant run up or you come down a hill. The reason for this being that its acceleration is okay, but it's not really stellar. It's certainly no 1C. The gun is now a 96 pen AP round and a 143 pen APCR. Of course, it also trades this for better matchmaking. The new Chaffee does not see Tier 9s anymore. And while 96 pen isn't really enough to handle any Tier 8, even most of the mediums, the gold round is actually sufficient for a lot of tanks. Chaffee still retains excellent on-the-move gun handling, as well as good general handling as far as driving goes. It's actually a bit smaller now because it lost the T-37 turret. So really it's not too bad. It's not the beast it was, but I think it will still end up faring quite well, particularly when it gets into Tier 6 and 7 matches. In this case, we're in a Tier 6 match, and a lot of the tanks in here do not have the armor to stand up to a Chaffee. Apologies for the jittery replay, it seems to have actually worsened. Although this east flank is perhaps not the best place for a light tank with no armor and a low alpha, low pen gun, I'm actually able to get quite a lot done because I'm facing tanks with similarly thin armor and also quite low alpha guns. They're also very bad. A Crusader being clowned even by another light tank is just kind of shameful. Chaffee's acceleration, as I said, it's not terrible, but it's not as good as its listed top speed would make you believe. For most combat purposes, you'll seldom see speeds above 56, 57 kilometers an hour on anything other than a long downhill run. But that is still quite a high speed at this tier, so you can still speed tank, as it were. I get lucky there, a little help from my KV-1 teammate. I was hoping to pincer these guys, but unfortunately the other end of the pincer just got pushed in. Our KV-1 has a 57mm gun, which means he has a very, very high rate of fire, but doesn't do a whole lot of damage per shot. However, if the two of us focus the target, we can take it down pretty quickly. Here I decide to push in case the KV isn't able to deal with the Panzer IV. Unfortunately, I bump into him because he backs up at the same time. I take the Panzer IV, but KV-1S pops around. Oh, sorry, KV-85, my bad, pops around the corner and takes me out. He's running the 100mm gun, which is the objectively correct choice on the KV-85. If you use the 122mm gun, you are bad. The reason for this is, I mean, I've always hated the 122 on the KV-1S. It's a terrible gun, it's horribly inaccurate, long reload, bad aim bloom on track movement, bad aim bloom on turret movement. It's just a bad gun. The only thing it had going for it was pen and alpha, but unfortunately the nature of the KV-1S being its high mobility and the fact that, you know, most players in them were kind of bad and wouldn't wait for aim to settle anyway, they would tend to just drive around corners and snapshot you at such a range where their hideous accuracy doesn't really matter, and they get away with it. The gun might be good for ship players because they're going to roll the RNG regardless of how accurate their gun is, but when I was playing it, I just could not stand it. I would sit and wait and take a perfectly aimed shot, and it would just miss completely or bounce off something it had no business bouncing off, and then you're crippled with this long reload, as well as the fact the KV-1S was built of fuel tanks. So I think I ended up rage selling the KV-1S on 2 or 3 separate occasions and didn't end up buying it back. Now, with the KV-1S moved down to tier 5, it's still hideously overpowered because they gave it the same 122mm derp gun the KV-1 gets, and of course marrying that gun with the mobility of the KV-1S while also keeping its bullshit frontal beak, it's overpowered as fuck. The KV-1S didn't get nerfed so much as get a new audience for its terrorizing, its reign of horror to take place upon. The tank which actually moved into its tier 6 slot, the KV-85, the frontal arm is nerfed. It doesn't have quite the same hideous beak. The angle's significantly worse actually, so it can't rely on that frontal beak armor so much. The 122 on it got absolutely just shit upon from a grand height. It now has such a bad reload and bad accuracy and just bad everything. There's no reason to ever use it. It's just, I can't put into words how bad it is. They pretty much took to every single aspect of the thing with a nerf bat. I mean, yes, if you hit somebody, it's still 390 alpha. They're still going to really hate you for it, but that's if you hit someone, and I think it's like a 17-second reload or something absolutely stupid. I mean, I think even the ISU has a shorter reload than that. A lot of the real big gun tanks do. As well as that, it has even worse bloom than it had before. It also has some of the worst accuracy in the game, like 0.4 something. More than probably 80-90% of the tanks in game. I mean, we're talking like RD tier accuracy almost. It's just so bad. However, it's also got a new gun, the 100mm gun, which is absolutely amazing. Now, the tank does only have 3 degrees of gun depression no matter which gun you use. This is an important note. If you have a Wheezy 120, you'll be familiar with what 3 degrees of gun depression actually feels like. That's what you're going to have to put up with. It can be hard to position it, particularly being, even though it's a fast heavy tank, it is still a heavy. You may have trouble getting into positions where you can actually use that gun, depending on the terrain. But when you can use that gun, it is amazing. It has very good pen for tier, has decent rate of fire. The accuracy is honestly not bad. It's a really strong gun, probably still one of the strongest guns in tier. And so the KV-1S and the KV-85 being split off, it hasn't really changed much. It's still one of the more powerful tanks of the tier, except now it's going to be even worse because it's also going to be accurate in the hands of a good player. And so you'll see less KV-1Ss rolling RNG luck shots on people and blowing them up in 1 or 2 hits, and more KV-1Ss just blowing the piss out of people from the other side of the map with very good pen, very good accuracy, or relatively good accuracy, I should say, guns. It doesn't have as much alpha as the other 100mm guns, say on the T54 or the T44. Actually, no, sorry, I'm wrong. It has about the same as the T44, so it's 250 alpha. The T54 has 320 or 340 from memory. It tends to roll around the 330s. It's not as high alpha as that, so you don't have to worry just yet, but 250 alpha at tier 6 is still very significant. That is more alpha than the 88mm does. That is actually, I think, one of the higher alpha values of tier 6, 390 being the highest I can think of. I'm just trying to... Yeah, I don't think there's any actual tank at tier 6 that does higher than 390 alpha that isn't a derp gun. So 250 is still quite good. Most tier 6 tanks hover around the 110 to 180 range, really. I don't think there are many that are over 200. So, long story short, Chaffee, still good. KV-1S, retarded still. And KV-85 may as well be the KV-1S. That really not much has changed except the name of the tank, which is going to be blowing the crap out of you. Other than that, those were the sort of the two big changes I wanted to clear up. I will be rebuying the KV-85 and maybe the KV-1S. So I will certainly be showing those how they've changed. But that won't be coming just yet. I've got some other games I want to record first, and I've also got some other tanks which are priority buys, so it may be quite a long time before you see any videos from me on the 1S or the KV-85, and of course owing to my upload queue, and the fact this will probably be uploaded sometime by 2017 if we're lucky, it might, you know, this game may not even exist by the time those videos go up, but if it does by some chance, well, there you go, you'll be able to see how I play them. But certainly my impression from test was that the KV-85 is a very strong tank indeed, and that 100mm gun is just very, very nice. Anyway, thanks for watching. This wasn't perhaps the best game to demonstrate the Chaffee, as I did end up getting wrecked, and Severogorsk is probably one of the worst possible tanks to land in a light tank. But I think it does go some way to show the Chaffee can still hold its own with a little bit of decent matchmaking and a little bit of sneaky play. Thanks for watching. Best of luck on the field, and I will see you next time.